days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. I want to be talking about the secondary, safeties, cornerbacks. 49ers have some free agents and some real big decisions that they need to make because it's going to shape the way this defense looks in 2023. Of course, they suffered injuries to the cornerback position, but they were able to overcome with some young players stepping up. At the safety position, they overcome the opposite way by going to a veteran off the scrap heap. And Tashaun Gipson, he came in and solidified that back end until Jimmie Ward got back, we thought. But then Jimmie Ward slid into the nickel. So it brings up all kinds of questions about how the 49ers are going to handle the secondary in free agency, in the draft. But we're going to get into it first by talking about how they handle the guys that are going to be free agents right there in the room. And do they potentially already have replacements? So let's go ahead and let's get this thing started. And I want to get it started with Jimmie Ward. Jimmie Ward has been the longest reigning 49er for a long time. He's been there since 2014. He's almost a 10-year guy for the 49ers. But it looks like he could be going. He was a $9.5 million cap hit, and that's a lot of money. And the 49ers moved him to nickel. And I think that they realized that there could be a cheaper option in Tashaun Gipson. Gipson played absolutely fantastic alongside Talanoa Hufanga. 5 interceptions, which is a little bit different than what Jimmie has done. Jimmie actually produced more turnovers in the slot playing nickel than he did playing safety. The 49ers might be thinking that maybe they go ahead and go a cheaper route at safety with a Gipson and let Jimmie Ward walk. Plus, I don't think Jimmie Ward was really happy with the way Kyle Shanahan handled him down the stretch and saying basically like, hey, if you don't play safety, you get to sit the bench. I think he said it even a little bit more different than that, maybe a little more stern. But yeah, Jimmie Ward is probably out the door because his market value is still close to $8 million per season. He's going to go out there. He wants to be a safety, and that safety money is a lot larger than nickel money. Warriors could offer him top nickel money, and it still wouldn't be enough. And this is probably Jimmie Ward's last contract in the NFL. So he's going to want to go out there and make a splash, get some money, and who can blame him? He's done a very good job for the 49ers through the years. All the way from playing corner to playing nickel to playing safety, now back to nickel. What's crazy is he was a top 100 player in the NFL in 2021 at safety. Now he was one of the top players, in my opinion, at nickel. He played really, really good. He was a great tackler, good fit in the run game. So the 49ers are going to have big shoes to fill with Jimmie Ward potentially moving on. It could be as simple as Tashaun Gipson coming back. He has been mulling over retirement, but like I talked about earlier, 5 interceptions, and his relationship with Talanoa Hufanga can't be going unnoticed. Those two guys are like simpatico. They really get along and they really fit together, and I like the chemistry that they have. And Gipson really stabilized that back end. Hufanga is very aggressive. He likes to get after it. He plays in the box. He makes plays. He hits hard. He takes chances. Gipson doesn't. Gipson is the steady. Gipson always is in the right spot. Tries to make the right plays. Is he the fastest anymore? No. Is he the biggest and strongest? No. But he knows how to get into the right positions and make the right plays, and that's what you need. If you're going to have one loose cannon, you need to have a stabilizing force. They are a yin and a yang, and it really works very, very nice for the 49ers. I think the 49ers would love to bring Gipson back. He's a Kyle Shanahan guy. Time in Cleveland means they've spent time together, and this is what Kyle does. Kyle brings guys in he's comfortable with. Tashaun Gipson came in and he played fantastic. Can we expect a 5 interception season next year because that's what Gipson did? No, I don't think you can do that. But I think you can expect solid safety play. And it might just be what you need, especially if you're looking to draft a safety to potentially take over for Gipson after a year or so, because you're probably not going to get a guy that can step in the 3rd or 4th round and start or opposite of Hufanga. I know Hufanga, a 5th round pick, got a lot of playing time in his rookie season, but in big moments, they really did roll with Jaquiski Tartt. So the 49ers bring in Gipson, probably draft a safety as well to create some competition. And that way they are set up because Hufanga is going into year 3. He's only on a 4-year contract, which means in the offseason after 2023, they'll probably have to negotiate a new contract for Talanoa Hufanga. You need to make sure you have a cheap option. Gipson was very cheap last year, $1.12 million. He'll get a little bit of an increase and a little bit of a raise because of his play last year, but I think he wants to play at the 49ers. He wants to play for Kyle, and he wants to play alongside Talanoa Hufanga. All reasons why he could take less money to potentially go chase a Super Bowl. Also in the safety room is Tavarius Moore. And Tavarius Moore, after 2019, and the way that he played, especially in that Super Bowl against Kansas City, was thought to be the guy that was going to be playing next to Jimmie Ward. He was going to take over for Tart, and the 49ers were going to have these two safeties that could not only cover, they could run, and they could make plays. And, Moore has proven to be a playmaker. But then in the 2020 season, he got an injury to his knee, and he had to sit out the entire season. So 2021, he had to come back. So it was a little bit of a different situation for Moore. Now, Moore is a fantastic special teams player. He was a really good on special teams as a gunner. He did a very good job, and the 49ers could find some value there. And if he can't find value on the open market, he may come back to the 49ers as a backup safety and a special teams guy. And the 49ers, I think, would welcome that. Moore's a guy they drafted, had tremendous speed, and you got to think the farther he gets away from his injury, the more healthy he'll get, the faster he'll get, the more agile he'll get. This is a 4-3 guy who had a lot of potential versatility to play in the slot, but also play the safety as well. Didn't feel like his play has continued to progress from what we saw from 2019. He's gotten somewhat stagnant in his play, but could it be injury-wise? Could it be him just reacclimating to football? Don't know for sure, but I think he is an option if the 49ers look to go the special teams route. He was very cheap this year, under $1 million, $837,000. Not exactly, a lot of money there for Tavarius Moore. When you're continuing to talk about the safety position, I wanted to bring up a guy they signed into a futures contract, and that's Taylor Hawkins out of San Diego State. This is a guy that I'm a big fan of, and he could be somebody that fits into the safety room. Right now, the 49ers have two safeties, Talanoa Hufanga and George Odom, and of course, Taylor Hawkins being the third. Signed to a futures contract, was on the practice squad all year, but somebody that impressed me early on. I was very high on Taylor Hawkins, and once we got to training camp, I said I look for Taylor Hawkins to beat out Leon O'Neal and and not be the first safety out of the room, and that's what happened. Taylor Hawkins, a pretty good guy, versatility-wise. I think he could help on special teams, but so he could at least fill that role by Tavarius Moore, and he's definitely a lot cheaper. So the 49ers may look to go that way. Of course, Moore or Hawkins may not even hurt the 49ers salary cap-wise. Only the top 51 contracts count against the salary cap. So anything underneath that, no harm, no foul. But Hawkins, keep an eye on that name. He could fit into the 49ers' future plans. A lot of ability there at the safety position. Now at the cornerback position, Emmanuel Moseley, E-Man, suffered the injury week 5. Too bad. He was having himself one heck of a season, and he was on track to have a gigantic contract in the offseason. He was going to get a Tavarius Ward type deal from a team, probably would price the 49ers out, but then he suffers the ACL tear. Now, what does that mean for Emmanuel Moseley on the open market? Will a team still offer him that big money? Would Houston or Chicago potentially offer Emmanuel Moseley $16 million on the open market? I think if that is the case, we've probably seen the end of Emmanuel Moseley in San Francisco. If it's a lot cheaper, maybe cut that in half, back to the $6 to $8 million at which he made over the last 2 seasons, then yes, Emmanuel Moseley fits into the future plans. The 49ers would love to sign E-Man. John Lynch said as much during the exit interview. He said, hey, we would love to bring E-Man back. We know what he's about. We know how he works so hard. So Emmanuel Moseley is going to be a priority for the 49ers bringing him back. If you can place him alongside Tavarius Ward in that secondary, your defense gets so much better. With Deommodore Lenoir potentially moving inside, Sam Womack, who they drafted this year, potentially being able to work inside as well, then you have a lot of possibilities what you can do with a versatile cornerback room. Plus, you just don't worry about leaving Emmanuel Moseley out there on an island. He understands his drops. He understands where he's supposed to be, and he's pretty good in man coverage as well. So 49ers with Emmanuel Moseley and Tavarius Ward would be absolutely set at the cornerback position So something to remember. Hopefully Moseley is back in San Francisco, but if those top suitors want to pay him, 15 plus million dollars, Emmanuel Moseley will be somewhere else. The injury will be the key to whether the 49ers can afford to bring him back or not. Another 49ers free agent cornerback is Jason Verrett. Of course, suffered the Achilles injury when he was looking to come back. It's unfortunate. With Jason Verrett, I look for him to go ahead and retire. It's too bad that he wasn't able to get back on the field. I think he was poised to have a really big season in 2021, and he got hurt in Detroit, and he just hasn't been able to get right. It's unfortunate, but his career's probably come to an end. Now, as far as Jason Verrett, if he decides to play, if I'm the 49ers, I don't say no, because I think Jason Verrett, as far as the locker room presence and what he's been to this football team, I think he deserves the right to try to come back. His contract was a little over $1 million last year, which means it's not one of the top 51 contracts. It has zero effect on your salary cap. Why not bring him back? Give him a 90-man, roster spot. Put him, on the physically unable to perform list, or and just see what happens with him. If that's what he wants to do, if he wants to transition out of football, do whatever you can to help him transition out. If he wants to coach, transition him into that. He's just one of the great people in the NFL and a guy that's overcome a lot of obstacles. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to overcome, the injuries lately, and I think it has hampered his career and maybe possibly ended his career. But Jason Verrett, a really good guy, and hope the 49ers continue to keep a relationship with him. I know he's a very, very well-liked person in that locker room. Now, another guy to keep an eye on in the cornerback room is Quantres Knight. He's a guy that as soon as we went over the undrafted free agents, and you can go back and watch that video, went over the draft picks and then undrafted free agents, and I talked about Taylor Hawkins earlier. I give awards they called stars. So if these are guys that I believe can impress or are the best of the bunch, I give them a star. And out of the undrafted free agents, Taylor Hawkins was a star player for me, and Quantres Knight was a star player for me. And Quantres Knight showed out in training camp. He was fun to watch. He plays in the nickel. He comes out of UCLA, and he's a very good player, and I think he could be poised to make the 49ers 53-man roster this year. It's an interesting cornerback room. We talked about Verrett probably on his way out. You're more than likely, right now, you have Deommodore Lenoir, you have Tavarius Ward as your starting corners. This all depends on E-Man, but I'm saying right now. And then you have Samuel Womack playing the nickel. Then you've got some decisions. You got Ambry Thomas still, so that's 4. So you definitely have Quantres Knight be a part of this 49ers room. If they look at Womack and say, well, he could potentially play outside, that helps Quantres Knight be able to play in, but he's very instinctive. He's a hard hitter, a good tackler, and I think he'd be a nice addition to this 53-man roster. So I'm curious how the 49ers handle free agency. If they bring Emmanuel Moseley back, do they just sit pat, potentially draft a cornerback late in the draft just so he can compete and you can put him on the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster? Or do they just say, you know what, we're good if they bring back Emmanuel Moseley with Moseley, Ward, Lenoir, Womack, Thomas, and Knight? Potentially they could be. That would be very interesting. I am very excited to watch what Quantres Knight does during the offseason and during training camp. He was one of the first guys out of the locker room to work out. I was there every day, and he was always out there getting his work in, very instinctual. And the joint practices versus Minnesota, he showed out all week. He was the standout, and then he went ahead and got the practice squad player of the year on the defensive side of the ball. So he's a guy to watch. He's a name to watch, and I have big, high hopes for Quantres Knight in the future. So this is what your free agents in the secondary look like. There's some pivotal ones that need to be taken care of. Jimmie Ward and Tashaun Gipson, Emmanuel Moseley. And if Ward and Moseley leave because of money, you're going to have to find another direction. It could be as simple as the 49ers feel comfortable with Deommodore Lenoir. He played pretty good at the end of the season. Maybe they're like, you know what? We got Lenoir. We're good to go. We can roll with Lenoir and Tavarius Ward, and Womack will be ready to go in the nickel. And if that's the case, well, then the 49ers are drafting for depth. I expect them to still bring in some guys, maybe some guys to compete, Knight to potentially help out as well. And then at the safety position, bring back Gipson, see what Taylor Hawkins has got, and I think you'll be okay at the safety position. I look for them to draft someone as well, and I already found a safety that I really like. I'm going to do a breakdown of that safety and post it over on Patreon here in the next week or so. So I'm going to start getting into draft content, starting to post on some of these players that I give star awards to. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode. I know I enjoyed talking 49ers football. Free agency is rapidly approaching. Of course, the combine coming up here real quick. And then we'll start getting a little bit into draft/free agent content. Really excited about all of it. Thank you guys for watching. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, stay safe and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.